What's going on, guys? It's Jordy Builds back in another video. Today we're going to be going over how to install the new battery gauge and temperature gauge for the standard Crazy Cart. This works on the 36 volt and the 48 volt controllers that I sell. So let's jump right into the wiring and get right into the install. So let's go over what you get in the gauge kit first. So obviously you will get your gauge as well as a 3D printed mount. This mount will go into your stock on-off port, but we will go over that in just a second. You will get the upgraded on-off switch that will go in the stock charge port, which we will also go over in just a second. And then you will get the battery gauge wires as well as the temp sensor. And with the temp sensor, you get your heat sink plaster glue. That way you can glue it to the motor and keep track of your motor temperature. So the first thing you're going to want to do is remove your on-off switch and your stock charge port. To do this, there will be a little bit of silicone on both of these, as well as a lock nut on the back of the charger. You're going to have to remove the silicone. I used a pair of needle nose and popped the silicone off because it was dried, obviously. And then took the lock nut off the charge port and then just squeeze the two tabs on each side of the on-off switch to pull that out after you get the silicone off of this as well. So again, this will work with 36 volt and 48 volt controllers. If you've gotten a controller from me already prior to me releasing this gauge kit, you will see these bundles of wire that is zip tied here. You will have a black and red labeled brake light, a black and red labeled charging port, and then a unlabeled black and red. If it is unlabeled or says indicator, this is the one that we will be using for the indicator and to get the voltage gauge on our meter from. So you can go ahead and cut the zip tie, pull this one out with the other wires here, and then zip tie your other ones back up. So that's what we're going to do right now. Be very careful not to cut any of the wires. So now you can see we got our 2-pin right here for our gauge. First, we are going to install the on-off switch. For the on-off switch or the power locks, it's going to be your blue and red connector on your controller. If you've already bought a controller from me, it probably already has a connector to it for your stock on-off switch. You will remove this, and then we will be using the new upgraded on-off switch, and we will be putting this plug on after we run it through the charge port because this plug does not fit through the charge port. So let's get right into that. So for your on-off switch, it will come with these two 3D printed washers as well as the metal locking nut that comes with the on-off switch. And then you will see you have your 2 prongs here, or your 2 pins here that go to this connector. On this connector, if you can see in here, there is a bigger flat side and then a smaller flat side. When you install this connector, you're going to install it from this side and have the prongs on the pins facing to the right of the connector. So you will install it like this, but we are not going to do that yet until we get it through the charge port because this does not fit through our charge port. So the first thing you're going to do is pull off your washers here as well as your nut. And we can go ahead and pull these all the way off of the on-off switch. You will take one of the 3D printed washers and go ahead and put it on the switch. Just like so. And then run your wires through the stock charging port hole and pull your switch through. Now you will put on the second washer and then your metal locking ring. And you'll go ahead and get that tight and it will sink in the on-off switch into the charge port hole. Just like that, we got the on-off switch on. So now we will go ahead and throw the connector on. Again, when holding it like this, you will install the pins with the tab to the right. So we will go ahead and pop this one in. And it doesn't matter which pin goes where because it's just completing the circuit. So just like that, now we have our new on-off switch plug and new on-off switch. So you can see like that. All right, now let's go ahead and go to the gauge. All right, guys, I apologize if you can hear the sirens in the background. But anyway, we have our gauge mount, and our wires. So now we are going to go ahead and throw our gauge mount in. It just pops in just like that. We're going to run our wires through the hole and plug into our gauge, just like so. Make sure you don't have power running to your controller at this time, and this only plugs in one way. So now make sure you have your battery gauge in the correct way because it is a little bit difficult to get out from the mount. So we will hold the wires and push the mount in at the same time. Just like that. And now our mount is installed. Now what we have to do is we have our power wires for the gauge as well as our temp sensor. So let's go ahead and go over the temp sensor now. So for installing this temp sensor, it is crucial that you do it exactly how I do it here, so you don't rip it out of the gauge or mess up your wire. So first thing we're going to do is cut these small zip ties that come from factory. You want to keep note on where these are. The best way to route it is to come up here and run it through the top of where your motor wire sits, just like so. Kind of pull it up through there and align it with the motor wire, and then kind of push your motor wire down here, and you should be able to run it through just like so. And then you will want to make sure that the temp sensor runs with the motor wire all the way from the back. And now we are going to go ahead and put our zip ties back on. So now you can scoot over your motor wire and run your temp sensor in. And then we'll pull that out just like so. Now I have my wheel facing straight. You can see the temperature sensor sticking out right here. So what we're going to do now is pull a little bit of slack up right here. And then we are going to turn our wheel all the way to the right. And you will see that it will spin with the motor wire. So we want to make sure that it clears all the way this way. You can see we are at the stopper and the temperature sitting. You can probably see it right here. Yep. So now we are going to turn it the other way. Watch our wire, make sure it doesn't get into a bind. No bind and still loose. So now we know just about where we can glue on the temperature sensor on the motor. So hold it on to a spot where you think is good. Make sure you have a little bit of slack here. We will zip tie this slack in just a minute. Hold it in the spot where you want to put it. Twist it all the way around to make sure that you don't get in any binds while you hit this stopper. And then you're going to want to do that for both sides. So we'll hold it down where we need to, spin it all the way around the other way. And as you can see, we still have a little slack and it's not super tight. So that's how you know you have it in the right position. So for me personally, it looks like we are going to be putting it right about here on the motor. So this should be similar for you guys, but it might be a slightly different spot. So now we are going to go ahead and zip tie this wire, that way it doesn't get caught up when it's turning, and then we will glue our temperature sensor to our motor. We are going to wipe off our motor where we're going to put our temp sensor to make sure it's all clean. And then we are going to go ahead and take a zip tie or two and run it around the motor wires here. And you want to make sure you don't make these super tight. You want to make it loose enough where the wire can still kind of flow through. About like that. Make sure we can still spin all the way around. Just like that. No binds. See, our wire is still loose. So now we are going to go ahead and take our included heatsink glue. Open it up. Like so. So now we're going to take a little bit of our heatsink glue. Put it on there. Just like so. Now we'll take a little bit for this stuff to dry, for this heatsink glue. So if you want to get a piece of tape and tape this down on here while the glue dries, that's what I'm going to do. And then we can go ahead and go over where to plug the wires into your controller. All right guys, for our controller wiring, I'm going to go ahead and unplug the power. I always do this when I'm working on the electrical stuff. And then if you've already bought a controller from me, whether that been a 36 volt or a 48 volt, you would have gotten an adapter similar to this with the on-off switch adapter. So you want to unplug this, and then we will take our on-off switch with the connector we put on earlier and connect it to the electric lock or the red and blue 2-pin on the controller. This is the same for the 36 volt and the 48 volt controllers. So we go ahead and do that now. Now this is just completing the circuit, so it doesn't matter which wire is where, but it does matter on the voltage gauge. You want to make sure that your red lines up with your red and your black lines up with your black. And This is the 2-pin that we got out of the bundle of wires earlier. So let's go ahead and plug in the power for the voltage gauge. And now we will go ahead and plug back in our batteries. We can turn on our on-off switch. You can see we're at 74%, 39.4 volts. We press the play button. You can see we're sitting at 16 degrees Celsius because we haven't ran the motor yet. So just like that, guys, if you need a video on how to set up your voltage gauge, that will be in the description. If you want to know where to buy this kit, that will also be in the description. Thanks for watching. If you guys like the product and like the video, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.